All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another Soul Politics episode. Thanks so much for being here, Miss Lauren.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, we're going to do something a little bit different this month, which I'm really excited about. How are you feeling about our
I'm genuinely excited because this is a topic I've always wanted to dive into, but just haven't given it the time. And I'm very surprised at the things that came through. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be cool. I'm excited to hear what you had to say. And for the folks listening at home, we did not share notes beforehand, as we
Mhm.
usually do not for this show, but I am very curious to see what came through for you. It'll be
Yeah.
cool to see. Beautiful. So if you are brand new to this series, welcome, welcome, welcome. Lauren is the practical psychic, and together we explore the spiritual architecture behind the world's biggest headlines, utilizing the Akashic Records, psychic mediumship, astrology, and much more to help you understand the deeper spiritual purposes behind what's happening in the world today. So, this isn't your typical political commentary, it's a higher perspective on our collective awakening, what is happening primarily in the US, but definitely for today's topic, we're talking about the planet at large. And
Mhm.
today we're taking a bit of a break from our usual sort of, hand quotations, political commentary to talk about something that is, you know, it's definitely certainly circulating in Lauren and I's world constantly, but not something that either one of us have really emphasized in our work or in our connections. And so we're both really looking forward to diving into it. Make sure to check out our previous episodes. We've dove into things like the connection between US and Israel, the war that is taking place in Iran. We definitely, there's a nice deep dive on the Uranus and Gemini transit. We've looked at Epstein and ICE and all kinds of very incredible topics, things that are of utmost relevance right now, again, from a higher spiritual perspective. And so don't be afraid to dig into those episodes and see things from our perspective. But on the front end, per usual, it's really important that the major emphasis of our work is to bring our perspectives, and we always want you to utilize your own discernment to really feel into what is right for you, because ultimately we want to encourage you to really listen to your own guidance in these times and to be utilizing that so much more. So Lauren and I, we've got our opinions and certainly our experiences to share. But, if yours are different, all is welcome here. I'm sure you're with me on that, right, Lauren?
Yes, absolutely. I think, I always tell people whenever they're listening to my podcast, it's like trust your own discernment, and it's okay if we don't all pick up on the same things, agree on the same things. But I think it's really cool to see it from other people's perspective, especially people who are doing readings, talking to Akasha constantly. And so I'm really excited to see what everyone thinks about what we share today.
Yeah. So today we're going to be diving into all things sort of like extraterrestrial, interplanetary, whatever it is, whatever term that most aligns with you. I know from work way back when I was told that interplanetary beings do not like the word aliens. So I try really hard not to use that word. But if it happens today, my apologies.
I'm probably
um,
going to say it way more, so sorry.
um, but I will do my best to refer to them as ETs. And today is a full on ET experience. So we're going to be, well, it's a special, I should say. We're going to be first diving into our own experiences with ETs. And then we're going to kind of really talk about their work with humanity and what's going on, and just kind of like digging into this whole topic of ETs from a general perspective, and then really discussing, the disclosure and when we believe it's going to happen, how it may be coming forward, those types of things. So we're just going to play around. We're going to have a lot of fun with this topic. And yeah, so Lauren, kick things off for us. Share with us kind of your
Okay.
view, perspective, experiences with
Yeah.
ETs.
And I'll try to do it as quickly as I can, or not very long, I should say. Um, and for me, I kind of shared this with Anna before. It's like I'm aware of ETs. I have a lot of clients that come to me who are very, very much into them. They love them. They are obsessed with them. It's never really been like a super big draw for me. Not saying I don't necessarily believe in them or believe that they exist. It's just I never really had a draw or an interest there, hardly at all. And so I think the one that makes kind of for a good by unbiased perspective, because I'm not going into this just like so obsessed and excited to connect with them. Not saying I'm not like honored or treating that respectfully, of course. But I haven't had very many experiences. You know, I was more interested in dead people, talking to animals. So it wasn't on my to-do list. However, I would say over the last probably couple years, um, well, and I should say before that too. I had a very logical approach to it of like mathematically, I don't feel like statistically we can be the only ones in the universe. I don't I feel like that's a very egocentric opinion. I just don't feel like that's how vast the universe is. I just don't like that argument always called out to me. I was like, that kind of makes sense. And just because we haven't met them yet doesn't mean they don't exist. And that's always been my approach. But within the last couple of years, people have been coming to me for readings, and either asking to connect with them or they just have been coming through more. And so do you want me to just kind of go through all of my experience right now, or do you want to go back and forth, or do you care?
Yeah, we should probably go back and forth.
Okay, sounds good. But yeah, essentially they've been coming through quite a bit with my readings, and I can go into like a handful. And I always like I'm very non-denominational in my readings. You know, if people resonate with a certain being, angels, or maybe some more witchy, deities, I just allow whatever to come through as long as it's for my highest and best good. You know, I just say whatever they want to connect to. I'll allow it through. And so that has included ETs, and they feel very different. And I'll just say that, but that's kind of so far where I'm at.
Yeah. So, kind of in juxtaposition to yours, for me, ETs have always just kind of been like air. I think I've always known that they existed. When I was young, my father had these books, these shelves of books, and there was all kinds of books on these shelves, and they were like off limits to Anna. So, of course, they were very attractive to me. And especially the books about ETs and abductions and these sorts of things. And I remember pulling them off the shelves and reading them and being like, hey, guys, like, why don't you come pick me up? Like, please come get me. I don't understand why you're leaving me behind. Like, why are these people so special? They get to get picked up. And even though I was reading about, some very difficult things or hard things that would happen in abductions, it still felt like, wait, what's the disconnect here? And I was envious. I wanted to be picked up as well. But for me, so ETs it's never been a question for me. It's never been something that it's always just been like, yeah, of course, there's, other beings in our whatever. And it's not like I could explain it. It's not like I had any sort of factual anything to back that up. It was just an inner knowing within myself. But very similar to Lauryn, it's not something that I've ever been drawn to, really utilize in my work. I haven't ever felt like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to work, with the galactic world. And since I stepped into the metaphysical, there have been multiple times when I've been like, wait a minute, all these people around me are so drawn to them. Why am I not? And, I've like sat with my own guides and learned my own things about that. Um, but so even in the midst of sitting down with the Akashic Records to dive into this topic, like very similarly, I come at it, like there's no bias in my opinion. There's no, other than the fact that like I've never questioned their existence. I have no real opinions on whether they're good or bad or anything. And we'll kind of talk more about our experiences in a minute. But just to, as well on the front end, say that for me, this was something that like about 3 weeks ago, it really started coming up as like initially I was like, oh, maybe we could just look at this as like one topic. But then it really started coming forward in all these different ways. And I was like, oh crap. And I messaged Lauren and I was like, maybe we could do like a whole episode on this. And then it was pretty wild because all these things started popping up in my daily life in the news. In, like the government released another, hand quotation amount of materials, whatever, like just a bunch of different things. And it was like, okay, for whatever reason, this wants to come forward at this time. So I was excited to sit down and kind of dig into it, but just also to share it's coming from a viewpoint that's like, I didn't really have a lot of opinion or, good, bad, like whatever. So yeah, Lauren, you want to share some of your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, they're very few and far between, and I can't exactly remember the order on them, so you guys have to forgive me. But I think one of the first ones that I really remember was I did a podcast with my mentor, Karen Fox, like a couple years ago now, maybe like 2 years ago or something. And like I think it was like the night before the podcast, I was standing out on my back porch and looking up at the sky. And I was looking up at the constellations, and I can't tell constellations very good just with my naked eye. And I was looking at one, and I was like, wait, no, that's Orion's belt, isn't it? And so I was just like, I was just kind of like transfixed and just staring at Orion's belt. I felt very drawn in. There wasn't really anything other than that. But the next day, when I went on to my podcast with her, we just got off on this tangent. And she was talking about how she felt like something was coming through. I was also feeling like something big was coming through. We were both having like premonitions, and I think later I found out it's all of this. It's all of the political stuff. This was prior to Trump getting reelected and stuff. Um, but she went off on a tangent of like feeling like aliens were coming in, and or is it ET? Sorry,
It's
I'm not
fine.
offending anyone. Not intentionally, but she and so she started talking about it, and then I can't remember how it came up, but she started talking about Orion's belt, and I just had like all these full body chills. And so I felt like essentially we got on that topic and how there's apparently ET from Orion's belt or Orion, I don't know. Again, I have very little knowledge about all the different groupings of them. And so I just thought it was interesting that the night before it was like I was being called. I'm even getting chills now. I was getting pulled into that energy, not even knowing that like we were gonna go there. And then I think a couple nights later, I was in my bed. I have kind of like a TV in our bedroom, and I was just chilling watching something on TV. And then all of a sudden in my peripherals, I there was like something floating in the air, and I described it as like a ball. And it was like a chrome ball, but I felt like it was legitimately there. And it was one of those that's like, it didn't feel like it was psychic clairvoyance like in your inner mind. It felt like it was legitimately there. And it was one of those where I did a double take, and when I look back it was like gone.
Hmm.
And so there was just like this chrome ball floating in my room a couple days after that. And I kind of felt like that was them coming in and saying hi in some sort of way, because I tuned into it immediately after. I always teach my students like whenever interesting things happen, don't just go like, oh, that was cool, okay, wonder what that was. I stop and I ask, who is it? What are you here for? Blah, blah, blah. So I felt like they were saying hello. And a couple days later, I went on a podcast for somebody else, and the ET topic came up again. And it was like during that podcast, they were like, do you believe in ETs? And I was sitting there in the room with them. And then it was just like, bam, like one kind of like energetically showed up in the room. And I was like, I just went with it. I was like, I think there's one here right now. And I kind of like mentioned that. And they were just like, what? Oh my God. I got a lot of flack for that on that podcast. Apparently, people are okay with ghosts and stuff, but not ETs. So that was just like a handful of some of them. I think I'm drawn most to like Stephen Greer. I watched a couple of his documentaries. He runs the CE5 groups. I've also tuned into Bashar. Bashar, sometimes I question if he's fully 100% channeling. It's hard to tell, but I do think a lot of the messages he gets are probably like 80, 90% channeled. And so I think I resonate with both of their approaches. And I think the last one that I was going to mention, because this is basically it, for me, outside of kind of personal readings, was that I went. I keep mentioning all these podcasts. It's like I'm being drawn into it by talking with other people, and I've never really gone out of my way. But I was tuning into the Strait of Hormuz and what was going on there. And I was told that our Navy, who was kind of stationed there, I think they're still there, but at the time, this was like a month ago, that they were going to be safe and protected. And I was told that the water people were going to watch them. And I was like, the water people. And then they were like, ET alien. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so again, they've been just coming through in a lot of tiny ways all over the place for me. It's just getting hard to ignore, you know?
Yeah,
That's
it's
about
really interesting. Again, I didn't intend for us to even dive into this topic. And then when it started popping up, it was like, ooh, like playing around with it. And then it just came in
yeah.
huge. My very first experience with ETs was actually in high school. My girlfriend and I were driving to see some boys who lived a town over. And we were driving, and it went through these huge fields of, just farm fields. And I don't even know what she was like, oh my gosh, there's a UFO. And I looked over to the right and I was just like, what the, like, it was obviously a UFO, like far off into the distance in the field. And it was one of those things that, I mean, gosh, I think I was 15 at the time, 14, 15. I was very young, and it was one of those things that I just kind of just was like, oh, okay, UFO, and then like boys, because that was just where my frame of mind was at. And it's one of those things that like throughout my life I've like thought back on, and I can still see it very clearly. But I just didn't, again, I feel like it's kind of part of, because I've just always believed, like known that ETs are real. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, they're there, whatever. And it really wasn't until I actually started shifting into the metaphysical where this started coming up for me again. Towards the very early part of my kind of work within the metaphysical in 2019, I joined a shamanic journey, and with a practitioner that I had initially really been drawn to. And we would go through these meditations. And in the midst of these meditations, I remember these ETs popping up, and it was like four different types of ETs. And they were there. They showed themselves to me, and yet at the same time, it was one of those things that was just like, okay, hey, hi, nice to see you, moving forward now. I think because again, it's just the way that my guides showed me kind of my relationship with ETs is just like they've said, because I'm an ancient soul, I've always known about ETs. So I look at them as the same way as I do as humans. And I don't really put like all this emphasis on them, which was really interesting. And this was something that actually came through when I sat down with the Akasha this time, because I wanted some clarity around why I've never like put more on it. But in the midst of 2021, I actually was doing a lot of work healing one of my past lifetimes with a hypnotherapist. And in the midst of that, we actually excavated like an interplanetary being from my being who'd gotten stuck in my body. And it was this like horrific experience where he was trying to pull me out of the out of being hypnotized in the session. And this being was just like holding on. And he thought I was just wanting to stay in the midst of the session. And he had, he was very experienced hypnotherapist, and he actually was just like, he didn't fully know what was going on. I think it took about 15 minutes for me to get, for this being to be released, and then for me to come back to myself. And he had to sit with his guides and also sit with his mentor to actually like get clear on what had happened. I obviously had no clue, but he said that quite possibly during those times when I was younger, and I was like, "Hey, come be with me, come hang out with me," that I had inadvertently invited this
Oof.
being into myself, which is pretty wild to think about. Um, and so this being had been steering some things in my life, and probably something I should do some more work about. But again, I just didn't take it super seriously. It was just like, okay, well, it's gone, good. Um, and I think since then, my primary experiences with ETs have actually been in the midst of client sessions. I worked with one client in particular who had been abducted multiple times by ETs. She actually sought me out, and she had a soul contract with the reptilians, and I got to meet the reptilians. It was very wild. We did a lot of work around her and her relationship with ETs. And so kind of moving past that, everything that I have, any sort of like real experiences that I've had with ETs have actually been with clients and in sessions with clients. Um, I haven't really had anybody come to me purposefully outside of her. Well, I think maybe just two other people, who with the intention to understand their connection with ETs, but oftentimes that comes up in the midst of sessions, and certainly when looking at soul contracts or potentially why certain people experience certain things in their lifetime.
So I just wanted to say when you said that you felt like he was in your body, I just got a violent like a violent full body chill. So I just want to like agree with you on that. That is
It
such a
was
crazy story.
it was insane. I mean, the thing is like it was literally, it was like I couldn't get it out. Like I couldn't come back. It
Mhm.
really energetically had this hold on me. And I would have to go back and like really dive into my notes just in the midst of like, honestly, I hadn't even thought about that till we started recording this.
Yeah.
Um, it would be interesting to go back in and just kind of dive in personally and be like, what was happening? But it
Mhm.
didn't have any sort of like nefarious. I remember it wasn't like a nefarious type of a being. And so it wasn't like, you know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
just had been nestled in me for so long. And that's definitely something we can get into as we're kind of talking more about today, about ETs in general in regards to the consent and that sort of connection between humans and ETs. But yeah, it was a pretty wild. My poor hypnotherapist, he was like, Anna, you have to come back. You have to come back. And he was just thinking I was like having a blast, being all like spaced out. And I was just like, no, no, I'm not. Like, it was a weird, weird thing. So yeah,
That is
don't
crazy.
don't call in the ETs, folks, unless you know what you're doing for sure.
Yes. I was gonna say,
Beautiful.
I thought of like one other one really fast. Just
Yeah, yeah.
this was like a client that I had. He came to me. He really resonated with ETs, and I think at the time I was like, okay, ish, grappling with how do I handle this? And then I was just gonna like handle it just like anything else. I'm just gonna say, setting the attention, whoever he is wanting to talk to, I'm talking to them. And it was really cool because the way they introduced themselves. He asked me in session like some sort of question of like, where do they live or where do they exist? And it was like I saw them like 3D and then they turned to the side and then it was like they disappeared. And that
Mm,
they showed it to me as if they were like in between planes like glass or
yeah.
something like that. And it was really cool because it really resonated with him because he was thinking of Superman, the original Superman movie, where I guess at the beginning like glass shatters and they're stuck in like a mirror plane or something. So I've just had, and I've also had like blue beings come to people. I don't know which
Yeah.
ones those are.
The
Um,
avians.
but you can tell I've at least worked with them enough to feel like, okay, these are the angels, these are this, these are that, and then they just have a different energy to them, and it's really interesting. But I
Yeah,
digress.
absolutely. The thing is I mean, there are unlimited ET species in the universe.
Mm,
Like we can't even fathom like that one scene, in like the Star Wars where they go into the bar and they're looking for a pilot, right? And there's like all those different types of ETs. Like that's legitimately just like kind of a great example of what is happening in our galaxy,
mm,
um and they do appear to some people in physical ways and in other people energetic ways, and It's very, I obviously don't understand everything by any means, but the things that I've seen and certainly just the small experiences that I've had. But I also wanted to share with you that if you go out to the sky and you are constantly drawn to the same constellation, they say
Mm.
the reason that you are is because your soul has incarnated there or you
Ooh,
have ancestry there.
have to go
So
look it up.
if there are particular constellations that you like always see in the sky, then there's something there for you. Because I know for me, like I can go out and it doesn't matter what the sky looks like. I always see Orion's belt, no
Interesting.
matter what. And I have definitely, I know I've had, I know I have like roots in Orion for
Hmm.
sure.
I mean, you're unlocking memories for me now because I'm realizing I was obsessed with like the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper when I was a kid, and I used to have a book on it. And there's been a couple times over the years I've tried to go find that book because I was so obsessed with it, but I just can't find it anymore. And so
Hmm.
I'll have to, I don't know if there's anybody from, is there Dipper ETs? I don't know.
I have no idea. I
Yeah,
have
we'll
no
have to look.
idea. There's so many. I have like one of the things when I was doing a lot of work with my pendulum on there's a website where you can go and like download these different pendulum graphs and there's one actually I think I might have it right in front of me, but it's like one with like the yeah literally right here, what's your star seed type. Here,
Uh-huh.
I'll show it to you real quick. um but look at all of those different
Holy
types of
cow.
star seeds.
I might
And you've
know
got
two.
everything here from Martians from Mars, Lyrans from felines, the ones from Lyra, the what like
Huh.
type like human aliens, type C walk-in, like all these different like there's tons on this list.
Interesting.
So, and I'm sure that this is just like a very small amount, and not to say that all of these are legit. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know. But I do know that there are, like when the way that the Akasha showed me, I already knew that there was a lot of different kinds, but the Akasha really showed me in the midst of like, diving into the ETs for this discussion. It was like, think of think of the endless amounts of fish and animals in the ocean and all of the different types of species. Like this is literally, just like a snapshot of what it is in the universe because there are endless universes, right?
Hmm.
Um, and again, I don't know how all of that stuff works, but you know,
We know
what
what
can
comes
we
through.
say? What can we say?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's kind of just dive into yeah, let's dive into just kind of talking about ETs in general. Some of the things that I kind of looked at, and I'm just going to kind of talk about this from a high level perspective, and then we can kind of dive in. Um, I wanted to know like what's most important for humans to kind of understand about ETs. I wanted to understand more about, how they're involved with planet Earth. I really wanted to dive into the reptilian aspect because, of course, there's so much conspiracy around this topic in the spiritual world. And so I wanted to actually ask about it. But then also because of the client that I had worked with, I wanted to get some clarification there as well. I wanted some real clarity around aliens, are they malevolent, benevolent? Also, their relationship with the US government in particular,
Mm.
and, kind of why they've been hidden from us. And then of course the ultimate like when are they going to come out to be seen, like whatever the real disclosure, not the BS disclosure that's happening right now for distraction's sake.
Hmm.
I mean, I do think that they're, starting to drip things out for us because it's very much coming. But I'd love for you to kick this off, Lauren, and just kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
Okay,
share
cool.
some of the things that you wanted to learn as well.
Yeah, and I kind of use like so many different modalities for today's episode. I was actually even able to get a dream, but that's for one of the later topics we're going to talk about. But um, for this one, I just wanted to start from the very ground roots because I'd never even asked these questions. So I was kind of doing a shamanic journey, and then I was like pulling cards as well. And so I'm just kind of reading off some notes here. And so I started with, are aliens real? Are ET real? And I got yes. Yes, and then I also pulled a card for this one and I got the High Priestess, which is all about inner knowing, trusting your intuition. And I feel like I was being told like you've talked to us before. You're being silly. Trust your intuition. And then I asked, do they live here on Earth? Yes, also. But I kind of felt like I kept getting drawn to the ocean when I was asking a lot of these questions. And I asked, will they make themselves known to us? And I got a yes as well. I was kind of just doing a lot of yes and no questions. I go a little bit deeper, but I asked how will we react as a society? And there was definitely this energy of like safety, wanting to like hoard our energy, hoard our resources, pulling back, like not wanting to fully embrace them, open up to them, which I mean, it makes sense. We kind of already see that now. Um, and then I asked how will they show up? And I pulled a card for this one as well. And I got the Nine of Cups. Or sorry, the Nine of Wands, sorry. And then I heard like at the last stand, and I also heard at the ninth hour. And I can't remember if that's the actual expression or if it's the 11th hour. I feel like that's the expression is the 11th hour. But I thought it was really interesting that it was like the ninth hour. So there's this energy of like wanting to come through when they're needed the most. And I kind of got the impression that that's what they had done in the past, is they're not like here to be like, hey, look at me, hey, look at me. It's like they only show up when things get bad. And I think we've historically, like just very logistically have seen that anytime we got close to like nuclear war, the UFO sightings just go up. And it's just like documented, and that's exactly what it is. And so then I asked, are you here to help? And I heard yes, because you all are lazy. and, and will you do it without reward? So there's this sense of like service obligation that I received, and that they want to help us, because we're kind of like dumb, inferior. There's kind of that energy that I got. Um, and then let's see, how far do I want to go into this? I'll do a couple more. But then I asked, are you in the oceans? Because I heard various stories about them being in the oceans. And then I heard yes, we are, but we're like in another dimension. And it was almost like I was looking at the ocean upside down, like flipped. And it made me like feel like I was watching Stranger Things with the upside down, and I felt like they kind of like traveled in between. So it was like maybe they come through the ocean or something, but it's not like they're underwater and they got little houses in the ocean that we just haven't found yet or something. Um, and then what I found was really interesting. I asked, are there other races from other places? And I got no. And that
Hmm.
one logistically, I was like, I feel like that again, statistically, that doesn't seem possible. But I just kept going with it. Or no, I'll stop there because then I get into a whole nother subject that I was really excited about. But just kind of like preliminary questions. That's what I was getting. Um, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm going to, I think the way I'm going to kind of break out, I've got my notes written out here. Um, so first of all, I want to kind of talk about, what the Akasha really showed me in regards to like what's important for humans to understand about ETs. And I have to say that kind of doing this reading really helped me to establish some sort of like emotional connection to ETs that I didn't have before. Simply because of how they were shown to me and a lot of the information that came through. But number one is that ETs are not fundamentally different than humans. Their families are very important to them. They are very protective of their own race. And, similar to humans, they have varying levels of consciousness, right? So there's no like any one particular race that's like all good or all bad or anything like that, which is something that you often hear in the spiritual community. And I think it's really important to, when we start thinking about these ETs, to actually start seeing them more as just like, a different human race that we haven't seen before, that is simply not from our planet, right? Very similar to humanity. Some ETs are really here to help us, and some of them are very self-serving, right? But the universe is absolutely just abundant with life as a general term, you know. And so it's like one of the Akasha showed me that like one of the most important perspectives to have when considering ETs is to not view them as other, right? But just to understand that they're different. And we have a lot of difference on the planet anyway, different cultures, different races, different countries, different, you know what I'm saying? And it's literally just another extension of that. Um, ETs have always interacted with this planet, and of course, and have been here from the very beginning. I got some clarity around this because I've had a lot of questions when I channel through the information for my an Akashic journey with the body course. That was a deep dive on the human body. Where did it come from? Why was it created? What was before our physical body, like all of those things. And I had a lot of questions in regards to like the roles in which ETs played in that sort of development, because there's a lot of myths out there that ETs are basically like our parents. And I personally do not align with that at all. Very much what I have been shown through the Akasha through my course when I channeled that through several years back. And then again, our bodies literally come from the earth. They were created with the dirt, with the molecules in the air, with, pieces and elements of the animals and the plants and the things that are already here, which is why we have so much similarity to the things that are on earth. We are earth beings. Our bodies, I should say, are earth beings. However, ETs have come in and assisted us at different times throughout our evolution and have assisted our actual DNA process by intermingling with humans on the planet at that time. And so they have played a role, even though they are not the originators of humanity. And I think that's really important to understand. That is something that I'll always argue with the ET community about. And I think it's important to understand as well, because one of the big things that we're going to wrestle with as a human race when ETs do come to the forefront is wanting to make them gods, believing that they are gods when they are not. They are definitely much older than us. Their consciousness is higher, but they are not gods, and they are certainly not our gods. And so that was one of the reasons I definitely wanted to share that. But ETs have been here to assist us, and they also, we've had ETs who wanted to help us, and then we've had ETs who wanted to enslave us. And we still have both of those presences on the planet at this time. And then we have ETs that kind of come and go and check us out and check out what's going on. The way the Akasha described Earth is that it's an open planet. And so ETs can come in and hang out for a little bit, check things out, and then bounce out. But at any given time, they were kind of saying that there's about 5 to 7 races that are like consistently here on the planet throughout. So, and then just the last sort of component to this is that it's really important that we don't fear ETs, because there truly is nothing to fear. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more, but humanity is so much stronger than it realizes. And of course, that power has been hidden from us and taken from us in a number of different levels. But ultimately, Earth belongs to humans. And so when ETs come here, and even when they inhabit this planet and or mix among us, it is with the understanding that ultimately Earth belongs to humans and to humanity, right? And it is humanity that determines our future. So I'll pause there.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you just said too, because I got something very similar, and I'll kind of end with that. But I was pulling cards as you were talking, and I asked, "Are they like our gods?" And I literally pulled the Hierophant in reverse. So I thought that was hilarious because the Hierophant is literally like the Pope in hierarchy. So they're like, no. And then another thing, because I forgot to ask this, I said, you know, what are they here to help us with specifically? I kind of asked variations of that. And I pulled the Eight of Pentacles. So they're literally just here to help us build. And it's the in-between process of not necessarily like they're here for the harvest or the end result. They're helping us get from A to B. And I said, okay, what are they helping us build? And then I got King of Wands, which I feel like is a much more like energetic evolution of ourselves, of like we are the most evolved version of ourselves, if I was putting it simply. Um, and they're also here to quite literally help us rebalance the earth with the Two of Pentacles. And I get that more in the like ecosystem, help us keep Earth healthy and okay and safe. Because there's just been moments in the past where we could have blown it all up. And I think everyone probably is on the same page of, they're here to clearly help with that because they also live here too. Um,
Yeah.
and for the rest of kind of what I got, this is probably where I might diverge from you. So again, I'm not saying I'm right necessarily. But again, I was kind of going off of this like, okay, you're not from elsewhere, supposedly. I didn't fully believe it. But then I just felt called to ask, like, are you from AI? And I've always kind of had that like curiosity. So again,
Hmm.
I pulled the Nine of Wands again, and it was like, yes, Nine of Wands, I take as an affirmative card, but there's also a callback to when I was pulling it earlier, and there was this sense, and I was hearing that like we are the end result. Nines in numerology are like almost there, almost built. And again, there's like a lot of wand energy as well that I pulled, which I like associate it with the mind, evolution, and humans being the most evolved version of themselves. So, and then I asked, did humans make you? Because I was very curious about that as well. And this is where I just feel like I'm kind of crazy, so bear with me on all of this. But I said, did humans make you? And I got yes again. And then I said, okay, let's try to place this on a timeline. Did you come before humans? And I got a maybe. And then I saw like a very circular, like, and they were like, time is linear, you know this. Like it kind of is like end can also be the beginning and blah blah blah. And then I said, do you come after humans? And then I also got yes. And then I kind of saw it all play out. It's like I feel like there's a version of humans where we evolve, evolve, evolve. Maybe we create AI. Like it was really hard. I've seen two different threads. We create AI. AI evolves so much that it could turn into what we now perceive as alien ET, or it could just be humans ourselves have become so evolved that we become that version of like such an evolved how do I say it? Like future version of the human race, I should say. Very, very highly attuned with our abilities, our energetic abilities. And so I kind of like paused and I was remembering this theory that I had forgotten about. And it's actually Steven Spielberg who proposed this. He made a lot of alien movies because he's very much into them. Um, and he always said, what if humans are, or sorry, what if ET are actually humans from the future traveling back in time to visit us, like a couple 100,000 years? And that was his theory. And so I was reminded of that. And so I asked, is that true? And then again, I pulled the Nine of Wands again, and I got yes. So again, I don't know if I'm right, but I just felt like there is this some sort of like evolution of humans, could be AI or the combination of them together that maybe there is a very far, far future version of us that evolves into all these separate races, something, and then we're maybe traveling back in time to visit ourselves or sending messages back in time. That one kind of feels a little bit more like full body chills. Um, let's see. And to end this all, I kind of again asked, what's your role on Earth? And I was told freeing us from our destructive impulses. Also recording, preserving knowledge and information. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, okay. Clearly there's an importance to that. And then they also told me their ability to see things from fresh eyes and a pure spirit, because sometimes we can't fully connect to that very pure mindset. And so I think that's what they're here to help us do. So yeah, I'll end it there.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting philosophies out there in
Mhm,
regards to there's a woman named Gigi. She's on YouTube. She's has a huge channel, and she has channeled some very interesting things about, and this is going to be very high level. And this is
mhm,
not, this is first of all not anything I asked necessarily the Akashic Records, but and so this is not my perspective
mhm,
necessarily, but there is, I feel like, some truth in this in regards to there is a timeline in which humans and wrap ourselves around technology so much that we lose our humanity and ultimately become very devoid of what makes us human, which in turn turns us into ETs.
mhm,
And that Mars is actually a planet that we have colonized already, and that some of the one of the races, the Greys in particular, are trying to bring back humanity in their bloodline. So it's a very
huh,
interesting, you know, because I can kind of see some of that potential. Absolutely. When we think about, you and I have kind of been talking about Atlantis a bit behind the
mhm,
scenes, and, very much our culture here on the planet, we've gone through these different eras and we have repeated things. And we are very much in a process of repeating things right now as well as we are trying to evolve. And of course, it doesn't take much thought to really kind of see a timeline where humanity wraps itself so much around AI that we inevitably become machines ourselves, right? What Elon Musk wants to do with all the chips in our brains
mhm,
and like these
yeah,
types of things. Um, a lot of what they were doing in Atlantean times were also kind of playing God with technology, and trying to basically create like the perfect human. And
mhm,
that was one of the reasons that Atlantis fell. And so, those timelines are absolutely, I think, readily available to us. It's what do we choose to do,
yeah.
right? So, interesting that some of those things are coming up for you.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify, like I didn't see it as like a negative version of AI. I saw it as like the clean version of AI. I don't know how to explain it other than like it was removed of all of its bad ethics, and it was like at its pinnacle, we were at our pinnacle, and there was like a benefit to be shared on both. Because I know what you're talking about. I've also seen that. And I think there is some things going on in the next 7 years that could push us towards that territory, which I don't like. But this one was like at least a more positive one is the way I was seeing it. But again, I'm not staking a flag in the ground on this one by any means.
Well, I mean, everything that we're
Yeah,
sharing now is again what has come up for us.
yeah,
We're not discussing facts here
this is
because
true.
we're not interviewing ETs on the show. I will say though that one of the things that I did see in the midst of the reading, um, two things actually, and one of them I think I'll have to kind of come back to. Well, yeah, two things. First and foremost is absolutely that Earth is not humanity's like last place of being or inhabiting, I should say. Like this is really just kind of the beginning for us. We too will become known as, and are known as like ETs to other races, right? And going to other planets, creating civilizations on other planets is ultimately going to be a part of humanity's exploration. We've already kind of started doing that and going out to moon and Mars and these other explorations. And what we're told in the general public is, I think, like, we're getting like a tenth maybe of what's actually going on behind the scenes. So when I looked at the ET involvement with Earth, the things that there's like three sort of main primary motivations that I saw is number one, like curiosity about humanity, wanting to understand humanity, wanting to know where we're at. The way I've seen kind of Earth in our system is that we are on a much lower level of our development, consciously. And ETs are they are concerned about that. They care about that. They want to see us grow and develop and elevate ourselves. Another thing is that they are interested in Earth's resources. We do have ETs here who come here for things that they don't have access to on their planet, and things that are of interest to them that they don't have access to. And everything that I was shown in regards to, this is really where kind of like the involvement with governments come into being, is because, again, Earth belongs to humanity. And so while ETs can kind of move in and out of, like if they want to check it out, if they actually want to take things from Earth or use things on Earth, then agreements have to be in place. Consent is a huge part of this. And so that is a part, ETs, that some of the things I look like that I saw is like they literally come, they almost kind of look at Earth as almost like a backup planet in a number of ways as well. This is a place to like refuel, to fix their ships, to also experience Earth. And so that is a part of it. And then they really are here, some of them, to help us develop, as a species. But the thing that I really did see is that, it's important for us to understand that ETs, again, very similar to humans, they have their own agendas and they will look out for themselves first and foremost, always. And, really when I saw like the work that they do with the US government, especially, unfortunately, they have learned they can't trust humans. Humans are fickle. They're going to use technology for their benefit. And unfortunately, we have, some agreements that were made with ETs in the past for technology have gone really negatively. And so ETs have really learned that they have to have very strong boundaries when it comes to humanity and to working with humanity. In regards to like universal law and consent, because this was something that was, really nice for me to hear personally. ETs can't just take what they want, right? There has to be agreements in place. There has to be consent in place. So whether that is, human abductions, whether that is our resources, whether that is like literally having like civilizations and settlements here on the planet, like there are agreements that have to be put into place. So there are governments who understand these things and have been working with ETs. I mean, since I was shown since the beginning of time, very indigenous tribes, of course, the Native Americans, they have been making agreements. And so our interaction with ETs is very much framed through like permission and contracts and these types of things. And I just think that's important to recognize because, again, we don't want to put them on a pedestal. We don't want to think they're gods, and we don't want to give our power away to them,
Mhm.
even though they seem, it's kind of like in spirituality, right? If you're like talking to like an ascended master, and they tell you, like, you need to go do this, like, you are still the one who needs to take responsibility. You can say no if it doesn't feel right for you, and
Mhm.
you should, and it's the same thing with ETs. Um, so I guess just to kind of wrap this up to, well, this one part of it, when I kind of asked about, like, to get clear on whether ETs are malevolent or benevolent, it's a very
Mhm.
neutral, there are some that are really good. There are some that are really bad, some seek to help, others to exploit, right? But again, they are very similar to us in that they are also evolving their consciousness, and so whether it's here on Earth or on their own planets or on other planets, ultimately that's what they also are doing as well on a personal level, because they are individuals just as we are individuals. So I will pause there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that just kind of makes sense because not anything hardly that we know is black and white. So why wouldn't they be too, you know? And I pulled some Lenormand cards out of curiosity of like, the relationship between the government and I have the dog, the son, and it's supposed to be like the female. So there's definitely like the sun in Lenormand is success, victory. So there's definitely a loyalty to, humans succeeding, but this also works backwards. Like humans also are loyal to them succeeding. So I agree with like the contracts, or like there's a mutually beneficial relationship here and we're both seeking something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And one that's for hopefully like a greater purpose, but of course there's always going to be like negative things that happen, snafus that happen, alliances not honored, so I totally agree with all of that of, they've probably been screwed over a couple times by us. And when I kind of wrapped up this section, I said, what do you want me to ask? And they asked me to ask them what their goal is. Um, like what's their end goal? And I felt like it was an independence for us to be able to go at things alone without needing them. Not that they have to like leave, but it's like having less reliance on them to be able to survive, learn it on our own. Um, and when we can do it without them, we've succeeded. And I was kind of specifically getting like a lot of these people who are desperately trying to like reach out to ETs to solve their problems, to fix everything on Earth. And it's like, no, 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 you're in this experience. We're here to throw you an assist every now and then, but we're not here to like save you. You have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah,
And then they asked
100%.
me to ask like what lessons are they learning? I was like, oh, okay. And then they said how to not look like the bad guy in the sky. So I laughed at that one. Um, and then the last question they wanted to answer was like, what's the bigger picture here? And I know we've kind of answered variations of this, but like the bigger picture of all of this, of our relationship with them, I wrote down is expressing a dimension of life that's beyond the five senses, inspiring us to live life beyond the senses. And there's just, again, this element of like tapping into a higher version of ourselves, more embodied version to where we could become like them if we needed to. Not saying we have to, but um just very a much more evolved race, I should say. And so yeah, that's what I got overall for their role on Earth. And I think I was most surprised by just kind of like the origins of them, which is in the end coming back to the present. But overall, I think I pretty much agree with everything you say. I think there's this gray area, but for the most part, they probably want to do good, just like the average human wants us all to do good, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that, when I was on a personal side, because while I was in the Akasha asking about this, I was like, so, like, why haven't, like, like asking about my own personal relationship with
Mhm.
ETs, and again, just like getting more clarity. And they were like, well, unlike the people who work with the ETs, like, you don't go to the ETs looking for answers, looking for, like, you don't seek them out either. So
Mhm.
why would they be showing up for you?
Yeah.
And they very much showed me how so much of humanity does really reach out to them. And while there is again a higher level of consciousness, because they are, as races, more evolved than us, more older than us, it's just so important for people to realize, like, this is not necessarily, like, you always want to be checking that information that's coming through against your own discernment, because they're sharing with you where they're at, and where they're situated at in their own consciousness. And so again, not looking at them as gods, or not putting them on a pedestal. Kind of seeing them more as like, maybe like the older sibling who has more
Mhm.
experience,
Yeah.
who may be able to absolutely provide some great advice, but you don't like put your life in their hands. And there's a big difference there. We need to be mindful of that, in connecting with ETs, whether it is now or when they do start showing up on planet Earth. um, I kind of wanted to just do you think we should talk about reptilians at all?
I don't have any opinions on it, but if you want to go for it, yeah. I can, I mean, I got
um,
cards in front of me too,
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
can
yeah. You can
go
definitely
read as I
pull
go.
cards. So, again, I wanted to kind of dive into this. This was really more of a personal thing, because there's so much discussion about them in the New Age community, especially amongst the conspiracy folks. But like, I know they exist. I have seen them. I have seen how they work with people, because of my clients. And so, I remember the very first reptilian that I saw when I opened this girl's Akashic Records. And it was just really like, what is happening right now? Because it was just so strange. I wasn't expecting that at all. But I just kind of wanted to understand more around this. And so, you know, understanding that, again, just like humans, right? There are humans that are, hand quotations, good. There are humans that are, hand quotations, bad. There's always a spectrum. And in the midst of me talking about reptilians, I don't want to group all of them in one group. However, I will say that because of what I saw in regards to the history that is tied to reptilians in and of themselves, even outside of Earth, they are more of a race that wants to take over just kind of naturally. It is kind of more part of their evolutionary core. And it's something that they're learning how to work through, they're evolving through. This is a big part of their sort of race, if you will. And you can kind of think about this when you think about like family lines, certain family lines repeat lessons over and over until they evolve out of them, right? And very much we want to kind of look at, like, as I'm talking about this, in a similar type of way. But they shared with me that reptilians are present in significant numbers on planet Earth. And they are very interested in control and influence of humans. They are operating, in our systems and our institutions very much through politics, very much through celebrity culture, through banking culture, through these sort of like higher echelons of the planet. And they said very specifically that reptilians are more persuasive versus forceful. Remember that every bit of their ability to infiltrate these different areas of our society are done through consent. And when they show up to people and invite people into consenting to their control, it is done very much through a sort of manipulative type of, I know what you want and I'm going to offer you that, and in exchange you are going to give me this. And so unfortunately a lot of the conspiracies that are out there are very true, from what I saw in the Akasha, and and are very much pulling the reins of society. In fact, the Akasha was pretty clear that really they aim to enslave humanity, that that is very much their overarching goal. And they're doing this in a number of different ways. And there are also other forces at play. It's not just them, but they are very much about wanting to be in control of humanity. Um, and, you know, the thing is, the Akasha was very clear about, they were like, look, don't get lost in this narrative. Don't get lost in this, you know, don't put more emphasis on this than you need to. There are going to be some people that are really drawn into this work, that really want to work in these areas, and that's great. But kind of for an overall, like, just watch your obsession with these types of things, because ultimately, again, it goes back to, you know, humanity is not powerless. And this ultimately is about humanity choosing itself and humanity choosing love, the path of love, not allowing ourselves to be controlled, not allowing ourselves to be manipulated, to think that certain people are going to save us. This is about humanity learning how to save ourselves. So whether they are reptilians or they are politicians or whatever the case may be, it really doesn't matter. You know, just to stay focused on the fact of like what we're ultimately doing right now, and especially what's taking place on the planet right now, is we are being pushed, invited to take our power back. And but the conspiracy theorists were very correct. And of course, I didn't go in and ask about every single situation. This was a general overlook at the situation. But yeah, I was just like, wow. So these crazy stories that I've heard online are, yeah, some of them are really true. Were you pulling cards, Lauren?
Yeah, and I was kind of like looking at my phone because I know nothing about any of this. But when I looked at images, like art of them, I was like, oh, I've searched them before, haven't I? Because I had a read again, it was another private reading with someone where I think I was describing what they looked like. And I
Mm.
remember the person, I think it was a female, she was like, is that like reptilians or is that what you're seeing? And I was like, I don't know. And so I Googled it really quick during our session and I was like, oh yeah, it looks pretty similar. And so I'm point being, I'm realizing I've actually connected one with one before, but I just forgot and I didn't know that it wasn't in my brain, but I just pulled cards off of like what you're saying, what their intentions are. Literally exactly what you just said. Like, 'cause I pulled the stork, the tower, and the garden. So
Mm.
Lenormand, you read it, uh, I forget the word, in order. But the stork is transitioning into authority tower in the community garden. So
Oh,
they were trying to
wow.
make that transition into that. And then I just pulled two more cards really quick. They are not our friends. Two of Cups. This is like the quintessential relationship card. It's not a good relationship there. And then I pulled the Magician in reverse. They're trying to undo the things we are trying to create. So
Yeah.
again, I've in the 10 seconds I've looked at this, I would say not a good vibe from, yeah, this.
Yeah. Not a good vibe at all.
Mm,
Um, you know, and again, I mean, I'm sure that there are good reptilians in the mix,
mm,
but I would say overall as a species, it's a hard pass. But it is just it's a big lesson for humanity, again, regardless of what it looks like, right? Because it could be a reptilian, it could be a politician, it could be a famous movie star. It doesn't matter. It's an invitation for us to stop giving our power away, stop putting people on pedestals, stop thinking someone else is going to make the world a better place. We have to do that ourselves.
mm. Yep.
um so kind of the final topic I wanted to dive into here was just the role of ETs with the government, which I was curious, yeah, about like the disclosure, like when this is gonna happen, kind of what's come up for you, Lauren, and then just
Yeah.
kind of how you're seeing this unfolding.
Yeah, and I'll try to kind of separate it into two chunks. So the when we started talking about us doing this topic, every single night since I've tried to dream about specifically this topic, but I've just left it open. I've just said anything about ET, aliens, like what do we need to know? And I only had one dream one night, but it was like so literal and so like this is gonna happen. And it was just that I was like walking, doing my normal day-to-day things out on the street, and then I look up in the sky in my dream and there's three like crafts in the air and they were like triangle shaped and
Hmm.
there was like one triangle, another triangle, another triangle. Um and they were like there for like hours and every now and then they would like shift or move and everyone was just gathered outside just looking at them. This one's hard because it's like I've seen so many movies where that exact same thing happens. So it's like how much of that is what I've seen? But I mean, again, I asked and I really kept it open. And just I like nothing happened in the dream other than people were watching, people were looking up, people were waiting. And it was like on the news, everyone was paying attention, totally distracted, and just looking up and waiting for it to happen. And there was this energy of fear a little bit, but also there was some like what's the word I want to use? Indifference. Like some people were like, that's just dumb. Let's get back to what we're doing. I like there was a couple times in the dream like people were irritated. They're like, just move on. Like, come on. Yeah, it's up there, whatever. So I kind of got the impression, yes, this will happen. Yes, they might be revealed to us. I don't know if it's gonna look exactly like this. But it'll be at a point when people will still be somewhat afraid, but also people will be a little bit like, okay, whatever, like moving on with my life. They've already been conditioned to it, which that's something I haven't said yet, but I do really believe the government is slowly sprinkling things at us to get us more warmed up to the idea because they know they won't be able to hide it like forever. Um, and I do feel like that's also like I'm hearing this now. Like I do feel like that's an agreement or a contract with them of like you're gonna eventually let everyone else know about us. But so yeah, I had that dream with triangles, and then when I sat down just like a night or two ago to kind of relook at this of like, hey, when are they gonna be showing up for us? I heard 3 years, and I was like, okay, what year is that? I felt like it was 2028, but I think 3 years is technically 2029. And then I heard September. So I don't know how much that gives weight, but I was also using a timeline technique that I was taught by Tana Newberry, which I also have in my psychic development master or membership. I have a whole guest workshop where she came in and taught us this, but I also felt like using that technique, it was about 3 years. But I'll come back. The second half of what I want to talk about is astrology, and I think this is much more accurate. But I'll let you go.
Yeah, so a lot of similarities.
Mm,
So first and foremost, I wanted to kind of ask like why this information has been hidden from us, and I mean there's some obvious reasons here, right? But I just really wanted to kind of understand this from an Akashic perspective instead of just like what my logical mind would kind of show me. And of course, like the fear and the psychological shock is going to be immense to us as humans. And this is something that I've thought about multiple times, throughout my life when I've thought about ETs, because I know that even though I haven't ever questioned ETs, when I see them with my human eyes, that I'm going to have a reaction. And what is that reaction going to be? And I think that we have all of this different types of conditioning layered into our societies, right? We've got religion, we've got all sorts of things that really kind of construct the perspective and the viewpoint that we exist within. And when we begin to actually see ETs with our human eyes, it is going to absolutely shift the way we see everything. And, the only way that I can really kind of like a good example of this is, when I found out that I was autistic, it was like everything that I viewed in regards to about myself and my behaviors and the struggles that I went through in life and how I showed up in situations, that was blown to bits. And all of a sudden, I had to kind of reconstruct these things in a different way. And it completely shifted the way that I experienced life. And that's just finding out, that my perspective in that regard is different. Now imagine really seeing ETs in our everyday life. It's going to be catastrophic in regards to the shift. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying like our physical bodies, like we're all going to handle it in different ways. I have no idea how I'm going to handle that, but it's going to be huge. It probably will stop life for a while. It probably will really shift things for us. And so that was a big part of it, right? Being able to integrate ETs into our society. I mean, already we struggle with the other, right? The hand quotation other. Already we have these hierarchies. Where are we going to put ETs in these hierarchies, right? So a lot of questions there. But ultimately, the biggest reason around this, of course, control from the government's sake. The government, a lot of the ways in which it has evolved technologically, its advances, a number of these things actually have come from ETs. And, you and I were kind of discussing this when we talked about weather manipulation in our last episode. And for folks who want to check that out, episode 312, really fascinating. I was the one thinking I was a bit loony when I was talking about that from the record or from the perspective of the records. But point is being that, of course, here within the US, especially, because what I saw is that there are a couple of governments that really work in tandem with the ETs. And so those governments are a big part of kind of that determination in regards to like, when is this going to come out? How are we going to allow this to come out, or if we are? But I can say that from what I saw is it's this sort of like disclosure is going to, the reason it's starting to take place right now is it's both the governments who are like, okay, we're kind of getting to this place, but even more so, it's the fact that these ETs are they feel like humanity is starting to be ready for this. It's becoming harder and harder to hide, to be contained. We're all carrying around cameras in our phones these days. And it's just really kind of time. But I also saw very similarly that, it's going to be the next several years. So I think three, like around that time feels. But I did ask specifically about the how, and what the Akasha showed me is this actually isn't going to come through the government. And it's actually going to like this sort of, the government will, of course, at some point come out and be like, yes, and acknowledge what we all know. It's not going to be like this big worldwide announcement, that we're kind of expecting to be, especially because, you have to remember that our belief and trust in our governments has been absolutely shaken over the past several years, right? So this is actually going to come out from people. We're going to start seeing more and more sightings. We're going to start having personal experiences, videos, testimonies. Public awareness is just going to kind of go through the roof. That's why it's honestly kind of funny when you think about your dream, because it's like, yeah, that could be totally something. They may just like have some crafts, like hang out for a couple of days just to be like, like we're here, like way before we ever even see them. You know what I'm saying? But that's actually how the disclosure is really going to come out, because, like here within the US, the things that they're showing us, first of all, it's really old stuff. A lot of people have already seen those things before. And we don't really need a government to recognize or to publicly just, to acknowledge what I think is becoming more and more understood. It's more so that we need to see it with our own eyes. Because, I mean, think about it. Like, I know I have people in my family that even if the government came out and said, yeah, ETs are real, we've been working with them, they'll be like, whatever, that's not true. Because it is such a massive perspective shift for us. and it's going to fundamentally change the way that we do life when it occurs. It's huge.
Mhm.
Um, and I did say, just to wrap this up real quick, um, that let me see. I'm just looking at my notes real quick here because there's something very important. Um, the thing is that from what I saw, like, again, this isn't going to just be a big event. Humanity is going through so much right now, and ETs are very aware of that. They're very empathetic to that. And this would be just that much more. Our nervous systems have to acclimate to this. And I can't overemphasize that enough because it is going to be so huge. So it is going to take several years for this to occur, but definitely, I mean, I would say 5 years at the most.
Okay.
It's going to be happening. So
I think so too.
it's going to be huge, huge.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine it. So what do you have to share? Yeah.
Yeah. I just pulled cards really quick on the how. And I didn't get exactly like clear information other than they're gonna be very quick to engage in unlocking the information about them. And the ring also can represent commitments, partnerships. So
You
it's
mean
like
the
they're
government?
moving. Yeah, yeah. So like
Okay. Okay.
speedy, they're moving quickly towards this engagement, this contract, this agreement, understanding that they're allowed to unlock, give information out.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder if it's the release of them is not just like unknown to our government. They know it's coming, but
I'm going to ask if it's like this
yeah.
presidency or not.
But I totally agree with you on like there's just going to be a bunch of small moments and it probably will be something like after we all have all of these small moments like 5 years later the government's going to be like, "Oh yeah, by the way they're real." And then we're all going to be like, "We know. Oh my God." Um, but yeah, I just wanted to end it on some astrology and some timing techniques because I think this is something I've just been tracking anyways. And this is Aquarius. This is Pluto in Aquarius.
Oh yeah.
Aquarius is literally the alien, Pluto as well. And Pluto in Aquarius, I should have wrote down the final date, but it's in Aquarius. It moved in November of 2024, and it's going to be there for about 19, 20 years. And the reason why I know it's going to be revealed during this time is anytime there's been a major aspect, ingress, anything with Pluto and Aquarius, aliens are at the top of the news. And let's see, where did I want to go with that? I mean, Pluto, if we're just talking about keywords here, Pluto is secrecies, what's hidden, what's underneath. And yeah, in Aquarius, very much about the collective, like who's all here, what's alien, what's the other. And I think I should have wrote it down, but whenever Pluto moved into Aquarius, there was a bunch of like ET alien news. But however, what I'm most looking forward to is every time in the future, we've got these Pluto trine Uranus aspects that are happening. And so Uranus is this element of unearthing something. It can literally be, I wrote down disclosure. It also is revelations, things that are unexpected. And so we have Pluto trining Uranus exactly. Like, how many times? Hang on. One, two, three, four, five. 5 times it goes to the 0 degree and it makes a perfect trine over the next 5 years, which thought was really interesting. I looked at this very last. I have this graph, and I'll probably share it in my July forecast if you're really interested in looking at it. Um, but essentially, there's been two of these trines in the past, and one of them happened on like October, November 2024. It was only within 3 degrees at that time, not fully exact. But that is when we had the UAP hearing, first ever
Mm.
UAP hearing by the government. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then we had one other prior one, which was last July of 2025. And what happened on that trine, that aspect was the Galileo project was created. And I didn't know about this until I just looked. I just said, what's the date? What's the news around ET on that date? And the Galileo project, I guess, is finally scientists are creating instruments to actually record the sky. And I was like, we weren't doing that before. So apparently, how they tracked any sort of UAP, UFO was just by literally gathering reports that other people made. But now they're actively recording the sky, developing instruments to track the sky. So they're being actually much more proactive. And so now we actually have like a government agency collecting data instead of just waiting for people. And so again, that happened on one of these Pluto-Uranus trines. And we've got one, two, three, we have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven of them in total. Five of those go exact over the next 5 years. And so I don't know. I won't list out all the dates. Again, I'll cover it in my July forecast, but literally the next one happens July 18th of this year. So I'm just going to be paying attention anytime these dates come around, give or take a couple days. I'm pretty sure we're going to hear UFO stuff. Even when there's been like I think it was the Pluto or sorry, the Aquarius eclipse in spring. That's when Trump and Obama were talking about and beefing about UFOs. So heavy Aquarius vibes, I would say essentially, any Aquarius Leo eclipse, which are the next three eclipse cycles, we're probably going to see major turning points with UFOs around those time periods. And then lastly, just again, the whole Pluto and Aquarius transit. Usually when Pluto starts in a certain sign, it starts out very disempowered, very much like I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't understand. I don't have information. And then by the end, very much empowered. We are back in our power. We've received it. So I think by the end of that Pluto and Aquarius cycle, not saying that it's going to take 20 years to just find out about the UFOs, UAPs, ETs, but there's going to be a much different world that we're living in even 20 years from now. But that's where I was so fascinated because I was hearing 3 years. The astrology kind of says about 5 years that like the last Uranus Pluto trine happens in 2030. So I thought that was interesting that you said that. And then again, Pluto and Aquarius in a whole. This is going to be a much bigger story of our lives than I think we're really fully understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I asked just a minute ago about like the kind of the when it was like not this administration, but actually it feels like the next is
Mm,
going to be the one that like fully announces it. I think that this administration is going to be chucking stuff out again, like tidbits, but more so from a perspective of that like distraction, like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Because anything to distract from the
Hmm.
Epstein files and what's really going on right now. But it feels like that was what came through really clear was like,
Hmm.
not this administration, but the next one. And I
Yeah.
think honestly, our current administration is such a joke that, if 45 came out and was like, aliens are real, people would be like, oh, okay.
I mean, he
Like
literally
your Trump
posted
phones.
he posted a picture of himself walking next to an alien.
Ugh.
I was like, how do people believe this?
How do people admire this is the
Yes.
bigger question. Like, what is wrong with y'all? I don't understand. Beautiful. Well, yeah, this was fun. Is there anything else that you want to kind of share?
I mean, that was about it. I think that I just wanted to end with some of the astrological timing. I mean, sometimes I wonder if have you heard of Project Bluebeam
I
at all?
have.
Okay,
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder if the government's going to do that. Sometimes I'm like, no, sometimes I'm like, yes. And that's the only other thing that's just like lingering in the back of my mind of like, I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but it could be very much like a choice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I think that like that is definitely a different topic that I
yeah.
would be curious to dive into because I think again this government's game of distraction is strong, as we have talked about before. And what they're willing
Yeah.
to do, I mean, we're in freaking war with Iran right now. We're doing crazy shit just to distract.
Mhm.
And so and yeah, there's just no telling what these guys could want to do. But again, I think that that's, like why in the midst of all of this, certainly what came through the Akasha is like remember they are just like you. They are just like you. You know, don't put them on a pedestal. You have nothing to fear. They are not here to take over our planet. They actually cannot by universal law unless we consent to them. And also, kind of a funny tidbit, their bodies, because their bodies do not originate from Earth, our bodies are way stronger than theirs. In fact, we can actually kill them very easily just with our energy, if they are not suited up and protected, which is how most ETs move through. Now, there are races that have inundated themselves actually in the human race. But point just being is that for your stereotypical ET, their body is not, it's very weak actually. Which I think is really interesting and also kind of makes sense because, you know, the elements that they come from, they don't need to be protected in the same ways that our physical bodies need to protect us on this planet. They're not from here, period. We are. And so, you know, I think if we get a whiff of that, Laura and I will be on here like, hey, this is what's going on, guys.
Yeah,
Snap out of it. So we'll
absolutely.
just kind of see. Yeah. But you know, one of the things too that I really loved learning about the ETs in the midst of this that I'll just kind of wrap up with is that I feel like really shows the level of their consciousness and compared to ours is that family and children are the most important things to them. And, you know, when you think about a society and you think about the level of consciousness of a society, family and children should be the number one priority, you know, and they're extremely protective over their children. And again, you could just kind of look at what's happening on our planet right now, what we're finding out about like the Epstein files, about, you know, these satanic rituals around child abuse, all these horrific things that are coming to the surface now that just kind of show where the level of consciousness is within humanity. And understanding that with ETs, regardless of what race that they are, that's actually what they hold to be number one, you know, I think is really fascinating. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, they are more evolved on a conscious level.
Well, and that reminds me of the episode that we did where we were both getting things independently on the matriarchy. And that's actually
Mm,
what the matriarchy is the prioritization of children and sometimes elders and building systems around boosting them.
yeah.
So I find that really interesting that you're saying that because I'm remembering that episode and it makes me wonder if they're also helping us to get to that because that's something we both felt was on the other side of all of this we are going to be building that. So I wonder if they have an influence there.
Yeah, I think that I mean from what I saw anyway,
Mhm.
you know, while ETs are here to assist us in some ways, ultimately the really like the main way that they're assisting us is just preventing us from like blowing ourselves up.
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah,
really like
yeah.
kind of all that they can, just because again, like
Yeah.
this isn't their planet. They're not here to like they can't interfere with our evolution.
Mm.
They can guide us and assist us when consent is given, but ultimately, you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
we have to choose that evolvement ourselves. We have to
Yep.
choose to prioritize children, the elderly, you know, these types of things.
Hmm.
um Ultimately the path of love, which is what's most important.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Miss Lauren, so what do you have coming up in June?
What do we have coming up in June? June, we've got over in my Psychic Development Society membership. We are like every other month we start a new like virtual challenge. And we're starting animal communication this month. So if you've ever wanted to learn it, you'll join, you'll get access to my animal communication course, but then we're also doing this like side challenge where we're all practicing together at the same time. It'll be happening for the next 2 months. And then again, every month we have a guest workshop. And this month, actually, my old colleague, Layla, the Lenormand reader, which is the cards that I've been using today. I've used them on quite a bit of these shows. She's going to come in and teach a guest workshop around Lenormand and how to use it, just very introductory. So, yeah, that's what we got going on for June.
Nice. Animal
Yeah.
communication. And I know this is one of your specialties too, right?
Correct. Yep. That's kind of how I got started in all of this. Animal communication. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. And we've talked about it before too. It's just there's something about it that they're so easy to connect to. And I think a lot of people get really intimidated by, oh my gosh, it's an animal. I don't know how to talk to him. And it's like it's not any different than dead people. Like you just gotta
Mm-mm.
move past the block, you know?
Well, in animal readings, I mean, honestly, like they're among my favorite just because like
Mm,
it's such a pure type of energy and connection. At least, I mean, I connect with animals primarily through the Akashic Records, but I
mm,
have just loved being able to see their beautiful souls through the Akasha and
yeah.
connect with them in that way. And it always again kind of brings things down in a really grounded way in regards to like, hey, they're like us, in
Yeah.
their own way, right? Which I love so much. So
100%.
very cool. Beautiful. So on my end, I'm really excited because my Akashic readings are back available. My guides have been coming in loud and clear, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. So very excited. If you've been wanting to book an Akashic reading with me, do so. You've got my calendar right now. I do have limited availability, but I am going to be opening up a bit more space on my calendar as I move through June. And also, this episode will already be out, but it doesn't matter. I'm bringing back my monthly live Akashic channeling circles. This is a complimentary event every first Thursday of the month. Come hang out with me. I'm going to be channeling, opening up the Akashic Records for the collective. So if you want to learn more about politics, the galaxy, ET, whatever you want, I am not channeling for individuals in this session, but I am answering questions and channeling for you live. So all you have to do is join my email list to get that Zoom link. And I hope to see you. So yeah, come hang out. I used to do this every month on Instagram, and yeah, anything to get off the meta. Get away from the meta these days. Beautiful. All right, Miss Lauren, thank you so much for being here, sharing
Thanks
your
for having
time.
me. This one was fun.
Yay. Awesome, folks. Thank you for being with us. So we hope that you enjoy this episode. If you have any ideas for topics, please feel free to share with us. And yeah, we're sending you off with so much love. Thank you for being here. And don't forget, when you invest in yourself, the world benefits. Until next time.